Kia ora koutou, Reese from QuickSense here, and today we're looking at mean for group data. Now, mean simply is what happens if I add up all of the values that I have and divide it by the number of values I have. However, it's slightly different when we're talking about group data. So what we're going to look at first is the general formula for doing so. So we have the mean equal to the sum, which we write like this, the sum of all data values. And all data values, actually let's write this out in full. The sum of all data values over the total number, let's just do a little hash for number, total number of data values. So it's the same kind of idea, the sum over the total number of them, but slightly different, right? Because in this context, what are the data values? Well, in this context, the sum of all data values, well, we're looking at f of x, right? So that's going to be this part here. And the total number, well, that's a sum as well. We're adding them all up. And that is this. So we've got two different parts in here. The frequency, how many times do they happen, and the sum of those values. So what does that equal to? Well, let's move to the left a little bit here. So this is going to be, in this instance, f of x, right? That's going to be 0, plus you see I'm just going down here, 16 plus 12 plus 4 equal to 53. All right, so I know, right, if we have this down here, my mean is going to be 53 divided by, let's figure it out, the sum of the frequency. That is 16, 21, that comes to 50. So 53 divided by 50 equals 1.06. Now this next question, admittedly, is a little bit of a puzzle. We're going to need to figure out all the edge pieces before we can place the center pieces down. Now what do I mean by this? Well, we have to actually add to certain categories or some classes. Okay, so in this instance, the frequency of one of the classes was doubled. So what I do immediately is I'm going to look down at these and figure out what they're currently at and what it might mean to double them. And with that in mind, I look at the second part. Another class has become the new modal class. Well, that immediately tells me, right, it's not this one. That's already the modal class. So if we're putting them into two weight classes, it's unlikely, well, what I need to do then is to figure out which ones can I double, and then what can I do with the rest of the dogs in order that the other thing is true. So for example, if I were to double this class here between 4 and 5, it would go from 10 to 20. Now, it would satisfy both of these requirements, right? It would double and it would become the new modal class, but it's not fitting into two different weight classes. So I'm not doubling this one here. All right, so let's look at this one here. If I double this, it goes to 16. So I'm adding 8, and I can't add 2 to another one to make it more than this. So it's not this one, right? We're not doubling 4 to 5 or 3 to 4. Now let's carry on. Is it one of these two? Well, if I double this, go from 6 to 12, that's 6. We have 4 left over. So the best case scenario I have is I add 4 to 10, And again, that's not making it the modal class. Okay, what if I double this one? We can double that, taking it to, let's use a nice purple. That would take it up to 4. So I've used an extra 2, and I have an extra 8 that I can use with something else. So can I add that 8 here and make it the new modal class? Well, 6 plus 8, that's not going to work. 3 to 5, 8 plus 8, well, that takes it to 16, but we're saying a new modal class, right? So it sort of suggests that it is by itself. It's not bimodal. That means then the only class that we can add 8 to, with it becoming the new modal class, is 4 to 5. So I'm just going to write on here plus 8. And this is going to help me in drawing my new table. So I have my frequency that I'm going to have in the bottom. How often do these things happen? And then I'm going to have the mid-interval values. So write my classes. Let's think of it like this, the mid-interval values. So for 0 to 1, right, well that would be, let's call that 0.5. That's the middle. Right, 0 to 1 will be 2 plus 2. Right, that's what we did with our purple. So let's call that 4. 1 to 2, 1.5. Well, that stays the same. 6, 2.5, that stays the same. This next one, 3.5, is also staying the same. It's not until we get to 4.5 that we're adding the 8. Right, taking it now to 18. Finally, 5.5, my previous modal class, is at 16. So I've added 2 and 8, taking the number of dogs from 48 to 58. So I'm going to use my mean formula, which is the value of those things at the top over those things at the bottom, the frequency with which they happen. Well, what is this? Well, the sum of all these values is going to get a little bit long here, but that's okay. We've got 0.5 times 4 plus 1.5 times 6 let's move this down. This whole thing, let's just move this all up. This whole thing is equal to 223. So moving back up here, this sum, 2, 2, 3, we already know, right, what's the total sum? Well, we don't need this here. We already know how many there are, right? There are 58. So what does that equal? Well, it's approximately equal to 3.84 kgs. So having dealt with the information we were given, we cancelled out a bunch of stuff before using our table to help us answer the question of the new mean weight for the 58 dogs.